Welcome to the Disruptors Flashback Wednesday. We're going to go back to October 24th when a good friend of our show, Brent Williams-Ruth, an attorney in Seattle, stops by to talk to us a little bit about business and how contracts should be written. So here's our show. We hope you enjoy it. I'm Bill.
And I'm Candace. And we're the Disruptors. Good morning, Bill.
Good afternoon, Candace. How are you?
Once again, you're showing your dementia, but that's okay.
I know.
All right.
And once again, you've had to bring your lawyer back to get this show straightened out.
Of course.
I don't think this is right.
Well, you know, when you have perfection in the room, you just want to continue to duplicate it.
Okay.
I'm talking about him and me.
Oh, okay. I wanted to clarify that for a moment. And, our new co-host will be here next week. Roger's going to be filling in for you because you're going to have laryngitis.
Did you get the rooster diapers?
No, not yet. But the bow tie fit perfectly, and the suit looks great. He really looks absolutely.
Well, your neighbors are complaining. They don't like his crowing at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, he looks really
I guess
wonderful.
It's better than the dogs barking.
Well, why don't you ask Brent why he's here? Because he's probably thinking there's something wrong with us.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Well, first of all, I want to announce our guest, Brent.
That would be lovely. As a co-host.
Ruth. Are you gonna introduce him?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Once again, do you have the young timers or the all timers?
I had your coffee, and I'm going 100 miles an hour.
Okay, so he has, his firm is called BWR Consulting. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's great to see you guys again.
Well, we're spreading love.
Well,
hugging necks, kissing cheeks, and changing the world. But I don't kiss Bill's cheeks. I'm just putting that out there right now.
That's good to know. I appreciate that. We call that a disclaimer in the legal world.
Is that what we're calling it?
Yes, we make sure that we establish parameters and establish that disclaimer.
Make sure we get that down.
So I was reading up on some disclaimers, and this is for educational purposes only. Right.
The disclaimer, you're still on the show, or when were we talking about?
Well,
I thought we put in a disclaimer about content coming from Candace.
I read his will.
To the senior
citizens. He needs to see you. I'm just going to put it out there.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's good to have a disclaimer. And I will just say, since we're that none of this is intended to be legal advice to any one person or individual. And that if anyone has questions or comments regarding the topics we've discussed, that they are free to contact me either through my website, bwrconsults.com, or by calling me at 425-830-5134.
See, we disrupted him.
We need to keep him on the show.
Yeah.
He needs to come in and talk to us more often.
We'll have to really put a spot together for him. Yeah, I'm excited.
So I had questions.
Yes.
Okay. So we brought you back to the show because one of the things when I'm speaking to my deliciously wonderful, yummy clients, inevitably we talk about contracts. And all of a sudden, sweat starts breaking out. It's like, why do I need a contract? You're like, you're already in contract with your phone, with your power company, water company, we have contracts daily.
Yes, we do. It's a great topic, and it's one of the things that law students learn in their very first day of law school, is that a contract is a bargain for exchange of goods and or services.
Wow.
And everything that arises from that is extra. And this is truly a topic where we could go on for hours. I know we don't have that, but you're right. There are contracts when you go into a parking lot and you take the ticket. There's a contract usually on the back of that ticket.
Yes.
When you buy something to fly, I fly Alaska. Do I get a referral for that? No. But your ticket on Alaska Airlines has
Mr. Wilson, you don't.
So they are everywhere, and it's honestly one of the things that small business people and owners really need to focus on, because you don't want to assume that you can operate with just a handshake. We like to think that, but without contracts or a improperly drafted contract, you could really be exposing yourself and your business to liability that you may not be able to cover.
Boy, that'd be awful, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And to stop and think about that, the actual effect that's going to have when time comes.
Well, and here's something. When we have our clients sign a contract, it's from the standpoint, really, for them. That's the way I kind of look at it, and that is they know exactly what they're getting into. They know exactly what I'm going to provide and what I'm not going to provide. Okay, so
and that's important and truly. And I'm just going to just interject and say you can contract for anything that's not illegal. And it can be upheld by the courts. And the more intricate a contract, I mean, if you're going to contract with two small businesses or a business and an individual or you and your neighbors, that could be as simple as a couple paragraphs on one page. But then if you start getting into, most people have bought a car at some point in their life. If you bought it through a dealership, you've signed a multi-page contract. Mm-hmm. Anyone that's ever purchased real estate has paid a contract that is several pages long.
Great big book.
And you joke about if your hand falling off because you have to sign your name or initial so much.
That's right.
So contracts can be as intricate or as simple as the situation calls for.
What's some of the most common contracts that you address with small business?
The types of business I work with are vast and varied. I've worked with doctors who are looking to get into a new office space. I've worked with other individuals who are doing outdoor services. I have people who are selling products. It really is varied. And what I am seeing most, especially for newly established businesses, is that they may have known they needed a contract. Mm-hmm. But they didn't know where to get one, and so they went online.
Yes.
And they entered the Google
my contract.
Please. And
here comes it. Dun, 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 dun.
And I've looked at some of these contracts for my clients, and I've said, this is absolutely fantastic if I'm on the other side of the equation. Now, this may sound like big government and, business interests are trying to trample the little guy. But as a business, you would want a contract that really protects your interest first.
Yes. Absolutely.
And, there are certain phrases and terms that if they're reversed, you have now put the onus and responsibility on you, as opposed to saying, hey, if you're a client that's coming to my business and you're going to hire me, you're going to assume the responsibility for X, Y, and Z. And so what I always do whenever someone brings me a contract is I read it top to bottom, and then I will ask them a question and say, did you mean for paragraph 6 to say this? Because there are several terms, especially if you've downloaded a general form, that you may not really understand what is a force majeure clause. Mm-hmm. And not understand what is a obligation for service or what the scope of service is that they are representing. And that's where I'll build from my clients with them to make sure that they have what they need and that the contract that they want that best serves the business interest they have.
Isn't it true, though, on some of these online contracts, people don't realize that some of those clauses do not withhold in the state of Washington? They're written for different states and different areas of the law?
Yes. Every state has different laws.
Yes.
And there are some that are the same or similar, but there are certain requirements in other states that a specific disclosure be made. That does not necessarily, like if you get a general contract and you see for California, for Wyoming, for Virginia, those provisions that are not actually included in the Washington provisions of your general contract.
So they wouldn't be binding in a court of law in Washington.
Correct, because it's not, if your choice of law provision says that the laws of the state wherever you are operating, let's say Washington, then the extra provisions at the bottom that are specifically just for California will not be applied to your contract.
Now, online law and contracting, I know this is kind of an interesting question, but for our audience, isn't it kind of like playing Russian roulette when you decide to take legal matters in your own hand and Google it and figure out what's going to happen next? I always like to add the Google it. It sounds good.
One of my friends has a coffee cup on their desk that says, "Your Google search does not equal my law degree," and
I love that, right?
And it's true, and I say that not as someone who is trying to protect my industry, but to say that there are so many levels and the case law has been building for 242 years that we have been a country.
Wow.
That case law has been being built upon ever since the beginning. And you never know if your specific situation may actually be applied. Just because you can find an RCW, which is the Revised Code of Washington, doesn't mean that there's not a contradiction in the WAC or WACs, which are the Washington Administrative Codes, which also doesn't mean that there couldn't be a Pierce County code, or if you live in the city of Seattle, a Seattle municipal code. And so, that's where anyone who finds themselves in a real sticky situation, you should find an attorney and ask for, and almost every attorney that I know is willing to talk with someone for free to get a basic understanding of what is happening and say, yes, you really do have a case. Or, actually you're reading this one law, but you happen to be in another section, that this is the section that applies to your situation. Because there are a lot of duplicative laws, but because it's under a section that relates to probate matters, then that law is under that section. And the laws that relate to businesses are found in the business section of the Revised Code of Washington and subsequent areas. So it's always worthwhile to call someone and ask. The worst they can say is, no, this isn't a claim, or it is, and here's how much it will cost to fight it. Because a lot of times you may have a dispute with someone that's over $500. In situations like that, you may be given advice to go check out your local small claims options.
Right.
Where in Washington State, there are small claims courts that allow for claims of value of $5,000 or less. In that situation, there's no attorney. It's very much like what you see on TV, where the two parties would come before a judge and they make their case and the judge will weigh in. But there's no attorneys on either side, and you can still handle small disputes. If it gets larger, then that's where, having an attorney almost becomes a necessity.
Wow.
Well, I want to bring up, because I had a situation, this has been a few years ago, where I was working with a startup, although they had been working together, two gentlemen had formed the company, and they were doing something at medical billing, okay? And finally, they got in a tiff, okay? And of course, they brought me in to take a look at their sales process, but which I did not ask in the beginning, but that has changed since then, because I asked when they started their fight, because one's wife was putting more time in, okay, it's partnerships, all right, Blissville, the honeymoon is always great until it's not, so I'll leave that alone.
Oh, wonderful, yeah.
But when I asked, do you have a contract with one another? And this was their response. They said, no, we don't. Well, okay, now my heart starts beating a little faster, okay? And I go, well, why not? And of course, their response was, we were waiting until we got bigger. And I'm like, you don't wait when you're bigger. I mean, not because I said, you don't wait because you're already in a tiff. Who gets 51%? Who gets 49%? Who gets 52 or 50? However you want to split the partnership up, I don't care. But so the two responses they came back was, one, we're waiting till we get bigger, which is not an answer for me. At least it's not qualified. And then the second one was, it's just too expensive. And I'm thinking, well, but if you've built a company and you have no documentation of your partnership, this is going to get ugly. I mean, how do you unravel spaghetti? So
that's a very good
one
question.
strand at a time. I've already done it. It's impossible.
Those were
One
pixie
strand
sticks,
at a
Bill. I was
time.
trying to keep your mind alert.
Okay, I'm trying.
No, and that is an amazing scenario and situation, because there are default positions. With two people go into a business and don't write anything down, there are default positions, and the law will then be unyielding into the division of if the business is actually breaking up. The law will control, and what it happens will be what it is, regardless of if the reality was one person was putting in 90% of the time and one person was putting in 10% of the time, and then you had a spouse that was giving extra time.